And again, if you would put your name and civic association in the chat box, a lot of you are doing that, so I appreciate it.
Okay, everyone, welcome to it's March already, March 2021 Council of Fort Lauderdale Civic Association's general meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:30 and Mary will conduct the roll call. Over to you. First, Vice President Peliquin.
No one next to it.
Okay, I'm only going to take the roll call of the board members. The rest of you, as I said probably way too many times, please put your names and your civic association in the chat box for me so I can make sure I get you. Okay, so I'm going to start the roll call for the board members. Michael Albetta. Albetta. Let me see. All right, hold on. Melinda Bauer. And Louis Castillo, he did tell me he might be late. So, okay. Christina, Jim Concanon.
Present.
Okay. Christina Curry.
Present, thank you.
Colleen Lockwood.
Here.
Marilyn Mimeno. I know you're there. Marilyn, I know you're there. Okay, Kelly Manning.
Present.
Mary Peliquin, here I am. Kathy Stubbs is excused. And Dennis Ulmer.
Present.
Board.
Let me just try Michael Albetta again. Linda, anybody see them? Nope. Okay, and Louis will be late. All right, well, we'll keep an eye out for those 3 lost board members, or probably late. All right, then go ahead, Colleen.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a jam-packed agenda. I want to go over just 3 really quick general membership updates. A number of the council board members had the honor of meeting with the executive recruiting firm conducting the search for the new chief of Fort Lauderdale Police. They are seeking input from the community on the ideal candidate profile for the new chief. Anyone that is interested in providing comments about their views on what an ideal candidate profile would be, the executive search firm is open to having that conversation with you. So if you are interested, please just chat to Mary that you are, and we will put you in touch. We sent out the leaf blower survey that was, I believe, shared by Dr. Gassman, who's speaking later on this evening. The City Commission is considering changes to the city's code that is going to impact the use of leaf blowers. There's been a lot of conversation about that. So the survey is going to gauge your perspective and concerns. But here's the thing, the survey responses are due tomorrow. So if you haven't taken the survey, we'll put it in the chat. Please do respond by the deadline of tomorrow. And the last membership update is regarding the Neighborhood USA Conference. Senior fellow Jessica Wilkes sent out an email, I think it was yesterday, about their annual conference. Neighborhood USA does what the council does on a national scale and with a lot more municipal involvement. Hal Barnes, the director of neighbor support, has graciously offered a handful of scholarship slots for that conference. If you are interested in attending that conference, please Google them and then let us know. And Frankie, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself right now or for now, thank you.
Race are concerning.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to put the leaf blower survey in the chat, and then we're going to go directly to our guests. Is Dr. Rader on yet? Jim,
Yes,
have you
I'm
moved
here.
him over?
Yes,
You
He's
are?
on. Yes, he's on.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to go to Dr. Rader first, and then Chris is joining a little bit later. Dr. Rader is going to give us a brief update. He's a lot to say, I'm sure, but he has a very busy schedule, as you would imagine. I'm going to turn things over to you, Dr. Rader. Thank you again for joining us this month.
Thank you for having me on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So things have moved along since we last spoke. Right now, 2 vaccines are already being administered widely. The 3rd vaccine just got approved last week, and I believe Publix is going to start administering them on Saturday and Sunday, which is the J&J vaccine. There are still huge lines, obviously. I think the number of people wanting the vaccine far outnumbers the available doses and available administration slots. So even if we have the vaccine, we need physical bodies to administer them. So that has been an ongoing issue. Also, the governor has opened up the vaccination to people that are younger than 65 if they have comorbidities. Understanding is that teachers and other professionals have also been granted preferential administration, which is important. So our schools should be able to reopen. Finally, the last important thing is the CDC came out on Monday with some guidance regarding people that have received both doses of the vaccine. Those people should be able to congregate in small groups with other people who have already received the vaccine, with or without masks, their personal homes. If you receive the vaccine and you are going out in public, the recommendations are still to continue wearing the mask, because you don't know who you're going to be next to. And in all likelihood, the larger proportion of the population still has not yet received the vaccine. So in the home, they have liberalized it a little bit, the CDC. Outside of the home, still the very strict recommendations that have changed. So that's as far as that. As far as numbers are concerned, the number of patients in the hospital with COVID-19 went up a little bit, came back down again. We have more than enough availability, to accommodate people if they were to get sick. I expressed some concern about what's happening right now for spring break, but you guys already know where I stand about that. 3 to 4 weeks from now, I expect to see a spike again. Hopefully many of these people are going to return home and spike at home, which is not here. But if they get infected, they will infect people that work in restaurants, bars, other people they encounter on the streets. So we may see a local spike as well. But, c'est la vie.
Wonderful, JJ. Thank you very much. I didn't introduce you the way we normally do, because I think everyone knows who you are. But for those newcomers this month, JJ is a well-known pulmonologist and critical care medicine specialist. No, that's not correct.
No, that's correct.
Okay.
I'm a pulmonary critical care and sleep specialist.
Okay, so yeah, I'll get it right one of these months. But he's on the front lines, and we have come to rely on him for reliable information in the midst of all the noise that we hear. We refer to him as our local Dr. Fauci. So thank you so much, Dr. Rader. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Does anybody have any questions, Dr. Rader? Okay. With that, we are going to move on to our city manager, who is also graciously coming to us on a monthly basis to provide updates from the city perspective, from the helm of the city. So Chris, I believe you're here. We'll turn the floor over to you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Yes, I am here. Sorry, I was running a couple minutes late. Good to see these faces again every month. So I've been told to be brief tonight, and that probably excites a lot of people. I thought I would touch on a couple things that have just been talked about in the community and offer a first-hand perspective of it, trying to change it up a little bit so we don't live constantly in the COVID world. I'll talk tonight about tunnels and spring break, and then take a couple questions if anybody has any. So spring break obviously is upon us. We saw a larger crowd at the beach this year than we're used to seeing. And candidly, I think it's not because kids are on spring break, it's because I think they're cold. And in the virtual world, they can study anywhere. And so we had several schools the first week come and say, I'm not really on spring break. I take classes during the day, but this is a better place to be than Madison at night. And so we've got, I think they cleared out the whole state of Wisconsin the first week, and part of Michigan. And so in addition to planning for what spring break was and is, we probably have a larger crowd because of those that came because they can study virtually. And I'm not sure how much studying is going on, but that's what at least they'll tell you. So kudos to our police and our code enforcement and all those that in our fire department and our ocean rescue is, making several ocean rescues as the winds changed the other day. They've done a great job in trying to maintain as safe as environment as possible. You'll see pictures of our beach plastered all over the media and the news outlets. And frankly, I would offer back to the media, if they have a better solution, it's not something we can arrest our way out of. And I just don't want our community to be known as the beach, like Miami Beach is becoming known as the place to go if you want to be arrested. So we're continuing to be ambassadors, and we'll do that through the season the best we can. Of course, if forced to act, we'll act. But we want everybody to come and have a very responsible and enjoyable time. The mayor did a video message for those that are arriving, and we've blasted it out. Hopefully, maybe some of you have seen it. But we're doing our best in an interesting situation to have an enjoyable time. Other thing I'll update you on tonight, because it's been around in the media as well, is tunnels in Fort Lauderdale. What do I mean by tunnels in Fort Lauderdale? There is a big study going on and discussion right now that started the conversation about a train tunnel coming through the downtown, a tunnel that pedestrian rail, commuter rail could go on. As you know, we are impacted by two different types of rail traffic through our downtown, both the freight line that comes through several times a day and commuter and more pedestrian type transit option with the trains, the Bright Line. And as the Bright Line comes back online, we'll have somewhere in excess of 40 or 50 trains that travel the corridor every day. What that means to the marine industry is the closing of the boat, of the bridge, the drawbridge for the trains every time a train comes through. And so there's been discussion, do we put a new crossing at grade? Do we put one at 55 feet in the sky? Do we put one at 82 feet in the sky? Or do we put one underground in a tunnel? And I give a lot of credit to our policy setters, particularly the mayor, who was focused on tunnel early on, even when that was laughed at. And one thing has led to another. We went and visited some tunnels that are being constructed in Las Vegas and Los Angeles just a couple weeks ago. They had enough interest in us that we had 4 members from their team in town with us all day last Friday. That there really is some opportunity to potentially tunnel the train option as opposed to putting it in the sky. I wouldn't have believed it until I saw it myself in real life. And so I think it's really exciting that dialogue is continuing. And you'll hear more about that as time goes on. They're doing stuff out west that deal with really like east-west connector type things, underground transit in more of a vehicle-based model. I guess I probably learned long ago never to bet against somebody like an Elon Musk as to whether or not they can get something done. I always want in my back pocket, one of the engineers asked the question, well, if these cars are underground, do you really know with precision where that car is at any given time? Because it's traveling so fast and within half a second of the car in front of it, do you really think you know precisely where it is? And the guy that was the president of the company said, well, I think we do. We use it to steer a rocket. One of these days I'll have an answer like that in my pocket that I can just say, yeah, I think I can know where this car is because, yesterday we were steering a rocket. And so good things coming as long as we stay progressive and keep an open mind and don't let, an idea or a dream die because it's immediately all of a sudden there's a different option that sounds better. Just keep pushing and we'll get there eventually. So Exciting times. If you have time for a couple questions on any topic you all might want to talk about tonight, I'm game for a couple, and then I think Colleen's probably going to cut me off tonight and say she needs to move on.
Well, that was great, Chris. Any questions from anyone about any other topics or the two that Chris mentioned?
Well, a topic that may not be able to be talked about, I want to ask a question on. I'm Michael Madfis from Flagler Village Civic Association, and we're concerned about the public-private partnership submittal on the one-stop shop property. Is there anything that can be discussed about that?
So Michael, that is a great topic. And I've also been approached by Leanne to talk about that. If you don't mind, we're going to defer that to a board conversation and then bring it back to general membership potentially at a future general meeting, if you don't mind. Unless Chris, you wanted to say anything.
And when you're ready to talk about it, I'm ready to talk about it. So you just let me know when that time is. It's certainly not something that's off limits, and happy to do that whenever you want to do it.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, so moving
you.
on, we have Chris. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next month, if
Yep.
not sooner. Appreciate all you do.
We'll be seeing each other in person here soon. I can't wait.
Oh, yeah, I think, what are they saying now? 4 months, 5 months away from all of us being back
You know, I'm
together?
cautiously optimistic, but with the dates that are being thrown around out there, of course, we won't do anything unsafe, but I really think we need to target the 4th of July this year and throw one heck of a freedom party. So, you know, we're going to keep that one in our distant sites. And if it's possible to do something safe, I'm targeting that day as maybe the first one that the city plans and comes back and actually has a special event.
Fantastic. New neighbor support, July 4th. Love it. Thank you, Chris. So our next presenter, and Nick, I'm going to ask, would you be okay if I allowed Dr. Gassman to go next? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to, Dr. Gassman, if you're all right, I'm going to defer to you to review the Sea Wall Ordinance code changes coming down from the county. I know we've asked you to keep it limited, so if we don't mind, I'm going to defer to you. And then for everyone, we do hope to have Dr. Gassman back at a future month prior to the beginning of storm season, so we can talk frankly and preparedly ahead of flooding and everything else we're facing. And Dr. Gassman is one of the most brilliant people I know, and we're very happy to have her leading the charge in many aspects of climate resiliency for the city. And she's here tonight to talk about a very specific ordinance change. Dr. Gassman, over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. I'm talking to you today about the proposed changes to what is usually referred to as the Sea Wall Ordinance. In 2016, we went through a rather rigorous process, talked to a lot of homeowners associations to develop the current policy where we have a minimum seawall elevation at 3.9 feet. The maximum height of any new seawall is based on the property's base flood elevation. There's a requirement that the seawall, any seawall that ends up being reconstructed or repaired, if it's more than 50% of the seawall, then you have to build to the new requirements. And then there's 2 additional major provisions which require that everyone maintain their seawalls in good repair. And if you're cited for not maintaining your seawall in good repair, you have 1 year to complete the repairs. And then if you have a seawall that's allowing tidal waters to flow over your property and impact your neighbors or impact the right of way, again, you may be cited and you have 1 year to repair the seawall. And if that means that you have to elevate the seawall to the minimum elevation, that will come when you come in for a permit. So those are the guidelines that were put in place in 2016. The major change that's coming is that Broward County has passed a regional standard for seawall elevations. And what is the major thing that will change in our ordinance is that the minimum seawall elevation is about to change upon adoption. So this Broward County Regional Tidal Barrier Standard, it expands the ordinance from seawalls to all tidal flood barriers, whether they be berms or other types of walls or structures that can prevent tidal waters from coming across the shoreline. The new minimum elevation is now 5 feet for any new or substantially repaired tidal barrier. Structures that are permitted before January of 2035 can be built to 4 feet, but they have to be designed and engineered to allow for a cap to be put in place by January of 2050. And then finally, where there is no previous seawall existing and a new seawall is put in, they have to include some sort of habitat enhancement with the seawall because they are now replacing a natural shoreline with a hard barrier. The final and very different part of this ordinance is it requires a real estate disclosure moving forward for those properties that have seawalls. And that real estate disclosure basically tells the new homeowner or the prospective homeowner that they have to meet the minimum tidal flood barrier elevation standards if they are constructing or repairing the seawall. So this lets new homeowners that are considering any work on their seawalls that there is a minimum requirement, and so they're made aware of that upon purchase of the home. All of these new provisions are part of the Broward County Ordinance for which the city must come into compliance by February of next year. This is a picture of the Isle of Palm seawall that the city recently completed. That new seawall on the right is at 5 feet of elevation to give you a sense of how high 5 feet of elevation is on a seawall. All new city seawalls are being built to this new standard already. And again, coming soon, anyone coming in for a seawall permit or that is cited will have to build to the 5 foot elevation. And so that is the end of my presentation. We are currently considering comments and feedback. This ordinance, because it is in the Unified Land Development regulations, must be presented to Planning and Zoning Board. We intend to go to them in May with the proposed ordinance upon receiving any additional feedback. And then it is likely to go to the commission sometime in the June and July timeframe. So that is the end of my presentation, Colleen. Thank you for the time on the meeting. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Gassman. So if there are public comments, they can get in touch with you directly, attend the P&Z board meeting, or both, right?
That's correct.
Okay, wonderful. That was fantastic. And we look forward to having you back very soon. All right, thank you so much. I do want to acknowledge that we have Assistant Chief Souza from Fort Lauderdale Police with us here tonight. There is a chat going on about homeless encampments, and he is responding in the chat. Chris, if you're still here, I do think that can be a topic of a future meeting as well. So I think, this continues to be an issue for us. So I think it deserves a longer conversation as well. So one stop and homelessness for future meetings. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker. We are honored to have with us tonight. And when I say honored, I believe Nick Harris was part of a panel presenting to President Biden last week. I thank a board member, Michael Albetta, for making our introduction, and just a little bit of her background. Nick Harris serves as the state, Florida, first LGBT consumer advocate. She was appointed by Florida Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried in 2019. She also serves on the Human Rights Coalition Board of Governors and is the co-chair of HRC South Florida Steering Committee, among many, many other leadership roles. She's a graduate of Florida State University Law School, is a veteran government lawyer with prior stints with FTOT and the Florida Department of Health. Here's why she's here tonight. I've heard Nick speak on several occasions. There is no one better equipped to explain in a clear and compelling way why racial equity and inclusion overall matters, is a priority, and needs to be front and center in the council's mission and in all of our lives. With that, it is my honor to introduce Nick, and the floor is yours.
Hi, you all. Thank you for having me. I was listening in to all the important details you all were sharing. So I'm going to ask you for a favor before we get started. I'm going to ask you to reserve the right to change your mind. I know we all come into things thinking a whole lot of things, and I promise I'm not here to blast you out. I'm hoping that I'm going to provide some information that you'll find helpful. I also will try to leave a little bit of time right at the end in case you all have some questions. So with that, we're going to jump right in, and let me optimize so I can screen share. And here we go, and share. Present. So you all have disappeared for me, but Colleen, I'll rely on your voice. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm hoping that many of you have heard of a TED Talk, right? They're these phenomenal talks that people do all the time, and you learn something. Dog has heard of the TED Talk, you all. So I appreciate that. Part of what I'm here to tell you is this isn't a TED Talk. So we are owned by TED, but what I like about it is it's sort of the opposite of a TED Talk. And so if you flip TED around, it would be called debt, right? Because debt, D-E-B-T, makes us feel uncomfortable to talk about. We can feel shame and guilt, and it can be scary. So what I usually tell people is sometimes talking about being an ally can feel a little bit like talking about debt. It can make us nervous, it might make us uncomfortable, but it's something we really need to engage in and talk about because it just doesn't go anywhere. And so I'm hoping that you all will sort of lean in with me. Got some music here. So ask people, a lot of times they say they're too tired. They say they don't know how. And they say the work makes them uncomfortable.
No, people have got to know that shit is going down. They got to do something.
I think we have, hello?
Nick, hold on. Let me, could we ask everyone to mute their microphone, please? Karen, I believe that's you. So please mute yourself so we can hear our presenter. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You all are okay. So here's what I want to say to you. Sometimes we are too tired. And so first of all, you have to self-care and be in a space to show up in allyship before you can help someone else. The second part of this is the I don't know how. And so many times when I talk to groups, a lot of people, have we all heard the word DEI? Have we heard that? DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you'll notice, I actually moved inclusion up. You will actually hear some people refer to it as equity, EDI, diversity and inclusion. So here's what I want to share with you all, because I don't want to read directly from this. But diversity is really just all of the things that make us different, right? But when we talk about diversity, what I want you to be thinking about is the kind that actually matters. If I said to everybody on this call, we're diverse, if I just was referring to everybody has on a different color shirt or everybody has a different background, when we refer to diversity, we mean diversity that matters, the kind that creates disparities. And so what I want you to be thinking about is, what do we mean by diversity that matters? Think about our protected class, right? When we think about from a legal perspective, that could be race, age, gender, color, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical ability. The next thing that we want to talk about is inclusion. And inclusion is actually just making someone feel welcome. And I want to be clear, you can have diversity, but not inclusion. Have we ever been somewhere where we didn't particularly feel welcome? If so, then you can understand the difference. You can be invited somewhere, but if I haven't made you feel welcome, then I haven't really included you. What I usually tell people is one of the ways to know that you are practicing inclusion, are people free to express their dissent? Can they share with you concerns that they may have? Also, one of the things you should be asking is, once they shared those concerns, were we prepared to make a change because of those concerns? Equity, and let me be clear, you can't benefit from diversity without inclusion, okay? You can have people in a room, but if we haven't fully welcomed them or made them feel included, you won't benefit from the diversity without inclusion. And so the other piece of that is the equity piece. And so if you'll look to the right, I actually have what I think is one of the best depictions I've seen of trying to do this work. As an LGBTQ person, a lot of times I find that communities I'm involved with will discuss equality. And so I think we need to be very clear about the difference between equality versus equity. And why do I say that? You will never have equality until you address inequity. And so a lot of times when we start talking about equity, we hear people say things such as it's unfair. So why I say this photo I think is a great depiction. Notice the first box, right? The first picture, you see the 3 people standing on boxes. This is a picture of equality, right? Everybody received the same box. But here's the point. Do you notice the little person on the far right? And know that it's a little hard for me because I'm looking at my screen, so I can't see you all. I'll just have to hope you're following. The little person still can't see the field. But this is equality, right? So equity is actually the center picture. What you'll notice is the taller person, they didn't need a box because they were able to see the field. The person in the middle only needed 1 box, and that gave them the ability to see the field. The third person, the smallest person in stature, needed 2 boxes to have the same view. That's what equity does. It works to try and bring us all to an even field, an even playing field. And so we wouldn't want to give 2 boxes to the taller person. And so what I love most about this is the third picture. This is what I call liberation, where it's something I hope to see in my lifetime, but I'm not sure. And what liberation shows us is what happens when you actually remove the barrier, the systemic barrier that kept the people from seeing the field in the first place. Only when you get there, no one needs the box. No one needs anything. And that's what we should actually be striving for. But until we get there, we always want to be mindful of the work we do around equity. And so I want to say this, part of how you can help leverage and address and be engaged in allyship is through leveraging your privilege. And so privilege, and I'm going to go to this next slide for you, and I'm going to actually read about allyship and privilege. Allyship is using your privilege and power to challenge oppression and advance equity and inclusion through intentional and accountable action. It is a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability with marginalized individuals or groups. One major component of allyship is addressing privilege. So I want you all to take a look at the picture on the right. I love this as well. As you can see, it says at the bottom, what's the matter? It's the same distance. This is a snapshot of equity. It is the same distance. But if you notice, the person on the right appears to be a woman of color, has a lot more barriers in her path to get to the same finish line. It's the same distance. If you'll also notice there's a white gentleman on the other side. Does not mean that he does not have barriers in his path. I want to be clear. But can we at least acknowledge that based on this picture, there are less barriers? And they also are a little bit easier to navigate. One of the things I've noticed, especially in this country after the murder of George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, we began to have conversations around privilege. And a lot of times you will hear people discuss specifically white privilege. What I say to folks is, and it's the best definition I've ever heard of, white privilege does not mean your life has not been hard. It simply means your race is not one of the things making it harder. White privilege is not the only privilege that people can carry, okay? And so you can have male privilege, you can have cisgender or heterosexual privilege, and we'll talk about what that means. First of all, if you are cisgender, you're not transgender. If you're not transgender, you are cisgender, meaning cisgender means how you think of yourself here in your brain matches your physical anatomy. You can also have class privilege. You can have health and ability privilege. You can have religious privilege. And so Peggy McIntosh to date actually has the best definition of privilege that I've ever heard. And what Peggy McIntosh says is privilege is like an invisible package of unearned assets that you can count on cashing in each day, but about which you were meant to remain oblivious. So I want to share this with you all. Peggy McIntosh is a white female researcher. And so one of the things she talked about is the forms of privilege she experienced. And why I share this with you is your goal as an ally should be to turn your privilege into change. That's how you help communities. And that begins with accepting that all of us gain some benefit through the oppression of others. And I'll say this, I'll let that sink in. A lot of times that's hard to hear. And I want to be clear, you in no way because of privilege chose that, but that's what actually occurs with privilege. In this country, we tend to think of things in black and white, male, female, gay, straight. The problem with the way in which we analyze things in the binary means that there's a winner and usually there's a loser. There's a group on top and then a group on bottom. And the problem with that is that the group on the bottom, they may not be any smarter, any better than the people who have been relegated to the level below or beneath that group in the bottom through no action of their own. And when we start to understand how over generations that can play a major role, that's what we have to try to address with privilege. And so some of the examples Peggy McIntosh gave that she experiences as a white woman, she says, I can arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time should I choose. I can turn on the television or open the front page of a paper and see people of my race widely represented. Whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. When they talk about some aspects of male privilege, if you're emotional, you don't have to worry about it being attributed to your gender. You can feel comfortable pursuing a career for which you may not be qualified. Why? Because we encourage boys and men to do that. What about being heterosexual? What is a privilege that you may have? You can engage in public displays of affection with your partner without worrying about being stared at or physically harmed. You also, if you identify in a specific gender expression that is traditional, you don't have concerns over what bathroom you use. I use pronouns she, her. Yet a lot of times if you see me out, I may have on a suit and tie because I dress in a role not traditionally expected of women. And so I have concerns when I enter a restroom. I've been harassed using the restroom. Normally, if I'm doing a longer presentation, I usually share with people, allow people to pee in peace. I'm not kidding. Let's please do that. So what I want to say to you all is, do I have privilege? I would argue that everyone I've come into contact with has some form of privilege. Even Nick Harris, as a queer identified Black woman, I have privilege. Why? I can go to a doctor should I choose. I can afford health care. I have socioeconomic privilege. My educational experience provides me privilege. I'm able-bodied. That gives me privilege. And so now the question becomes,
some people are born into families where they have to walk miles just to get water. All I have to do is turn on a faucet. That's privilege.
If you have ever tried to change your speech, if you were embarrassed about your clothes or house, if you would never think twice about calling the police when trouble is
I think privilege is when some people have some things and other people don't have.
Race. I feel privilege is something that you don't even really have control over. I think it'd be silly for me to say I don't have a fair amount of privilege, considering like the country I live in and the job I get to do, and the college I was allowed to go to.
I suppose being a white male will help me end up somewhere towards the front, but I'll take a few steps back from being gay.
I don't think I'll make it to the front. I think I'll maybe be in the middle. That's just a gut feeling I have.
If your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, take one step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take one step forward. If you were embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up, take one step back. If you have ever been diagnosed as having a physical or mental illness or disability, take one step back. If you have ever been bullied or made fun of based on something you can't change, take one step back. If you get time off for your religious holidays, take one step forward. If you came from a supportive family environment, if you can see a doctor whenever you feel the need, if you are able to move through the world without fear of sexual assault, if you took out loans for your education, if there were more than 50 books in your house growing up. So these are your final positions.
I think it felt kind of strange for everyone.
It's a hard thing to discuss or even reflect on. It was very awkward. I think when you can represent it so visually like this and so immediately, it definitely takes on a new form.
I think we were like all joking around in the beginning. It was pretty lighthearted, and as soon as the questions started coming in, the mood shifted immediately, and we all it was just silent.
Just looking back and seeing like a bunch of people behind you is not a good feeling.
It's like weird how you want to like hold on to explaining a certain privilege, like, oh, but that's not actually me because like I had to work really hard for that. So it's weird to like take a step forward when you feel like you're taking a step forward with someone else, but you wear a lot of the baggage of like how those things were hard.
It was like more emotional than I thought it would be.
It reminded me of when they talk about slavery in high school and you feel like angry for a few days, but then you just realize like, this is how it is.
For me, it was kind of frustrating almost to look back and see how much further some people were behind me, and realizing that, you know, a lot of that stuff, no amount of hard work or even legislation can make up that gap.
It's interesting being an Asian American because you're not really sure where you fall on the spectrum of privilege.
I know that for me, one of the reasons I ended up so far back was that there were questions around safety as an African American, as a woman, as a gay woman. There are just so many different ways that I don't feel safe.
I feel like I just learned to be grateful for what you have. You know, we're in such a huge society where it's always complaining about what you don't have. It just shows you that for some families, like each family, you're meant to do better. My grandparents did good, my parents did good, and I'll do even better.
I do think if you're not like aware of privilege, you should do this exercise, but it's more complicated.
Well, let me try and go to the next slide. So I want to share with you all, this work is supposed to feel uncomfortable. That's what a lot of people won't tell you, but yet we have to do it anyways. We have to be willing to get out of our comfort zone. So a lot of times when I speak to, and I'll be honest, I have a lot of my white friends who will say to me, I'm worried, Nick, I want to do the work, but I'm worried someone may call me racist. Someone may say that I'm, homophobic because I forgot to ask pronouns. What I say is, Most times, if you are worried about making a mistake, that will keep you from doing the work, you'll never do the work. I assure you that you are going to make mistakes in allyship. And so what I tell people is don't let the setback of a call out set you back. Be willing to get uncomfortable. And I leave you with this: oops, ouch, and educate. And give me 1 second to come back to you all so I can stop my share and I can see you all. When we say oops, ouch, educate, you're going to make mistakes in allyship. When you make them, you educate yourself. You recognize, ouch, that you hurt someone, and you then educate yourself. And if necessary, you apologize. So I want to say this. What my goal is when I talk to any group, I don't make privilege a bad word. In fact, I tell people it's a superpower. And I need you to be willing to use your superpower to assist other people. And that's the key. How do we use and leverage our privilege to help someone else who does not have it? And so I challenge you all to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone, to be willing to get uncomfortable to do this work, because we cannot do it without you. LGBTQ rights weren't secured by less than the 15% of population. Black people in America represent about 12% of the population. We didn't secure civil rights because we did it as a community by ourselves. We rely on the allyship of others. And so with that, I will end. And I'm sorry, I was trying to rush the presentation a little bit because I knew we were under time constraints, and I appreciate you all listening.
Wow, Nick, that was amazing. I'll get it started. Let's open it up. Let me first ask everyone that wishes to acknowledge Nick in the chat with a very powerful presentation. I hope you'll all agree that she's one of the rare people that I've heard that can explain this in a way that is heard, because hearing this is the first step. It starts with our collective understanding. And what I heard you say, Nick, is it's really important that we develop relationships with people who are not like us. We need to build trust and allies outside of our comfort zone. And we will not grow without that 3-step phase of oops, ouch, educate. Love that. So we're getting some comments here. Folks would like to see the video and share that out. It's mostly thank yous. Does anybody have a question for Nick that they would like to ask?
And that video, if you will type in privilege, it's a great video you can find on YouTube. And so, Colleen, you make a great point. If I could just add this, normally if I had you all in person or if I could see you, I'm sorry, we're operating off Zoom. I got one screen. I would ask you all to pull out your phones, your camera roll, and I say, look at your first 25 pictures. Who in those pictures can you find that is a race different than your own? Who in those pictures would be LGBTQ? Who in those pictures might have a physical disability? Because a lot of times we stay in our silos, right? And so if we aren't having conversations with one another, I always say it's hard to hate people up close, right? And so when we start to recognize how in our own lives, if we aren't going out and meeting people and talking to people with different perspectives than our own, then we're in a lot of trouble. And so I often tell people, if you don't do that, take a look at your wedding picture. If you've gotten married, where was the diversity in your wedding? That's how we can quickly find out who are we hanging out with, who are we around. And so what I would say to you all is be open to the diversity that comes when we meet other people, but remember, you won't benefit from it until you add inclusion and you really make them feel welcome. Don't do it now, it's COVID, but sit down and break bread with someone different from yourself, someone who identifies in a different community, because that's how we start to talk with one another and support one another, not talking over one another. And with that, I think that's it, Colleen.
Nick, I will be so forward as to ask you, I think this, we all agree that this is part of a continued dialogue and making a difference, right? The impact and the change and the action requires this to be continuous and ongoing and frankly, a lifelong exercise. Would you be willing to come back and talk to us?
Madam President?
Yes, sir.
Christine Curry has a hand up. She has a question for Nick.
I did not see a hand up. Christina, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Nick. First of all, I wanted to thank you so much. And I want to thank Colleen and Michael for being willing to bring this dynamic into the conversation of the council, because on my last night out, it is so exciting to me to see that this is the direction of where the conversation is going. But Nick, my question for you is, as members of our community, where do we look to see you that we can continue to activate with a person like yourself who cares about these types of things? How can we be more active with you?
I'm happy to drop my information before I leave in the chat, you all. But what I'll say is there are lots of people out in our community right here in Broward that they're doing the work. Again, how do we engage around issues that don't necessarily affect us? I spend a lot of time talking to people in community dealing with housing insecurity, food insecurity. How do we have conversations with people around that and then also look for answers? I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit because you all clearly have taken on leadership roles in your communities. But again, understanding that we don't need borders and barriers to our communities. At the end of the day, it's one Broward County, one state, one nation. And unless you all have, I think some other people have figured out another planet that I'm not aware of because of the way we're treating one another. I don't know of anywhere else we can go. And so if we're going to be here, how do we start having conversations about how to move everybody forward? But Christina, I'm happy to drop my information in the chat. The other thing I say is there are lots of organizations that do this work. Reach out to them. Reach out to them and find folks that are involved doing this work right now that impacts our communities.
I am just so happy to see you here participating with our municipality. It is so important to me to see you here engaging all of us together. And I really just am so proud of this organization for bringing you in and just giving you the time. And I thank you so much for doing that for us, Nick.
No problem. And just so you all know, again, y'all, I've had about a 12-hour day as of now, and I've got another meeting. So I apologize how I had to rush it and kind of felt like my energy level was a little bit low, but please just know it's not you all. But I do these on implicit bias. I do one where we talk about pronoun usage and LGBTQ outreach in community. I do them on a number of topics, microaggressions. And so as long as you all are open to continuing the conversation, I am more than happy to keep coming back. So I thank you all for your time, and go out there and keep getting in good trouble as our he's gone now, but our great rep who told us get in good trouble. Together we can all get in good trouble.
We love you, Nick. You've got a new huge fan club. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that is going to be an extremely hard act to follow. I will say that the next topic on our agenda is one that is of significant interest to many of you, and it is short-term vacation rentals. So a lot of you have shared your vacation rental horror stories with First Vice President Peliquin, and thank you for that. And irrespective of the pending legislation that Daphne is going to speak to, for those of you that are not aware, please know that the city's Department of Sustainable Development is actively involved in tracking vacation rentals here. Ms. Portia Williams, the head of that department, has asked us to share a flyer, and I am going to pull that up shortly, but also that vacation rental properties are tracked on the Fort Lauderdale website, fortlauderdale.gov/vacation rental. Code violations, enforcement cases, registered properties or not are all published there. And the city uses a monitoring software to monitor the activity of all the vacation rentals in the city and enforce against the non-registration using that software. So please take a look at that page, and in particular, the case process flow map for any challenges you're having with your vacation rentals now. And with that, I will dig up that flyer and show it later, but I'm going to introduce Daphne, who has spoken to us before on legislative issues. We're thrilled to have you back, Daphne. I'm going to turn the floor over to you to cover the vacation rental legislation and the latest.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I can't turn my video on. I'm on the road, but thank you for having me back. I will give you a very brief update on what's been going on with vacation rentals. The Senate bill has been placed on a committee agenda for Thursday, the 11th. We are hearing word that there might be an amendment filed which would remove the preemption of local governments altogether and just keep a platform preemption. It's a rumor, but we have until about Wednesday, 6 p.m. before we see if it's true or not. So if there is that delete all amendment that has been filed, then we can breathe a small sigh of relief and then look towards the House bill to see if the House will take the same amendment. If they're identical and the bill passes, we're in good shape. But again, Tallahassee, anything can happen. So my advice to you is keep fighting the good fight. But as of now, I would hold on to whatever letters or videos that you have, because we want to keep them in a good mood before any bill amendments get filed. So I will definitely keep everybody up to date on Wednesday to see if anything happens. And then Thursday is when the bill is up. And that is my brief vacation rental update.
So what you're saying, Daphne, is that let's hold off on the letter. We can have them drafted and ready to go, and the council will have one. And I think we're encouraging local neighborhoods themselves to send letters, and we'll have a list to send those to. But you'll let us know when it's a good idea to press send, right?
Correct. And most likely pressing send would be to the Rules Committee on the Senate side. And on the House side, if I pull it up really quickly, it would be in regulatory reform, but it hasn't been agendaed in its House committee. At least one vacation rental bill has not been agendaed. The other one I know has, and it is in Ways and Means, and it has not been scheduled to be heard. So the key is to keep it that way for it to not be heard. But we again, session has started last week, so everything is pretty much rolling pretty quickly. Bills are getting heard on Wednesday and then already agended for their second hearing within that day that they are voted on. So it's pretty much a last minute game at this point. But I would say hold off on sending anything. If you do have your horror stories, please ensure that you put that local government responded to that horror story, because leaving it open-ended shows that local government regulatory reforms are not working. And that makes the case of the opponents, those who are against not preempting. So the supporters of the preemption will take that and say, but you see, nothing is still being done by local government. So this is why the state should take over. So please be sure to include that code enforcement responded to your request pretty quickly, that, local government is best suited to take care of this issue because they've been taking care of this issue. just make sure to close that loop.
That's a really excellent point, Daphne. And even if we know that there are some further adjustments we'd like to see locally, we surely don't want the state to take over. So thank you so much. I see that Marilyn has her hand raised. I'm going to put up this flyer so you can take a look at the flyer that Portia asked us to share. And Marilyn, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I would ask Stephanie to sort of elaborate on why strategically she feels it's a good idea to back off the pedal to the metal right now on the rumor that they may be thinking about doing the right thing and eliminating the preemption and just taking the best part of the bill, which is the platform, and make that statewide. What is your thinking there?
So the reason why we want to hold off is because historically, when the rumor has been brought out that they're going to, respect local government's home rule authority, they tend to say, well, we're getting an influx of all this mail that's opposing the legislation. We're working with local government. I'm actively working with the League of Cities, with the Association of Counties, with the platforms to ensure that we come to a compromise. When that member or that sponsor or committee members get that influx, it agitates them. And then once they get agitated, they say, you know what? Forget coming to a compromise. We're just going to take this as it is and keep it rolling and not take any amendments whatsoever and just wait for the governor to do what he needs to do should this pass.
Wow.
So we are taking a very cautious approach because it's such, people are very tightly wound. And we just want to make sure that we are in a good position at the end of the day. So strategically, it's good to just watch and see what happens as of Wednesday before the bill is heard on Thursday to see if an amendment really drops. If it doesn't, then it's best to send the influx of information and letters to the next committee of reference because it will pass out of this committee.
Okay.
So
I could just say, wow.
Yeah, no, we're so much better informed, right, this year. In terms of understanding the cycle and the pipeline and the parties involved. And obviously the council is independent from the city, and members can choose to do whatever they would like. I would reference Daphne's guidance as very helpful and one that is going to help us be what we all want to be, which is successful and having this legislation blocked and not passed. So, we can take that up at our next board meeting, and then all members are welcome to follow Daphne's advice or not. But I think it's prudent. So very grateful. Any questions for Daphne while we have her here? Okay. All right. So I am going to stop share and go back to our agenda, and our next agenda item. Thank you all for being so patient tonight. I think we have 2 more agenda items before we go back to regular council business. I guess the big news of the evening is that we're holding the council election this evening, and I am going to find your report, Marilyn, and I'm going to turn the floor back to you to conduct the Council of Fort Lauderdale election. Over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you, Colleen. The nominating committee made its report at the February meeting and presented a slate of officers and board members, which you can see on the screen here. Thank you so much. The nominations have been open since that meeting. And if there are no other nominations from the floor at this time, I would move to close the nominations and waive the requirement for an election by secret ballot and accepting the nominating committee's slate of officers and board members for 2021 and 2022 by unanimous consent. Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you very much, Luis. I would ask all in favor of accepting the nominating committee's slate of officers, say aye or raise your hands. And aye, okay. Are there?
I say aye.
I say aye, okay. If there are any nays, would you please indicate that now? And here, excuse me?
That is better. Find out the ones say no.
Right, okay, well,
Sorry, frog.
hearing no nos and seeing no nos in the chat, the nominating committee proposed officers and board members for 2021, 2022 is adopted. Thank you all very much. And I want to thank all the members of the nominating committee for their work on this. Thank you. Back to you, Colleen.
Fantastic. That was easy peasy, light and breezy. So I want to welcome our new board members, Frankie Lane, Abby Laughlin, and Barbara McGill. Thank you for your service coming into the board. And thank you to all of the current board members for your continued service. It means a great deal. You spending your time, sharing your brain trust, and helping our community be better. We really appreciate it. I think it is very important that we acknowledge the very, very special contributions of our two outgoing board members, Kelly Manning and Christina Curry. Kelly, your grace, humor, and insight will be sorely missed. Christina, you have been a brilliant addition to our board and have helped drive many improvements and innovations in council practices. We wish you both good luck in your future endeavors and hope you will continue to be involved. We'd love to have you stick around for as much or as little as you would like. Any and all that would like to shout out to Kelly and Christina, please do so in the chat. We really, really appreciate it. All right, so final part of business is audit committee appointments. We have an annual audit of our financials, and the board has appointed past President Marilyn Mamano and board member Jim Concannon to conduct the annual financial audit once again this year. They have volunteered to do so. So they will provide an audit report in the coming months. The council membership needs to vote on this and be okay with the audit members, Jim and Marilyn. So can I have a motion or a vote? Let's just do this. Anybody opposed to having Marilyn and Jim conduct the audit for the council finances for this year? Okay. All right, great. Thank you very much. All right, then we have treasurer's report and acceptance of prior meeting minutes. So Melinda, I'm going to turn the floor over to you to go over the treasurer's report for this month.
Okay, thank you, Colleen. So I'm just sharing my screen here. I think you can probably all see this first image, which is the bank balances and the treasurer's report as of today on March 9. So our SunTrust account has pretty much held steady since I deposited the checks 2 weeks ago at 11,710. Our PayPal account has gone up some just due to some recent renewals. We're at 1,689. Yesterday I did check the PO box and found a check from Lauderdale Manors and 7 Isles. Thank you. And so there's 100 that I do need to go to SunTrust and deposit, and that will probably be tomorrow. Our total is 13,499.51, so almost 13,500. Since I last reported to the membership a month ago on February 9, we have had 10 PayPal payment renewals and 4 renewals by check. I have updated the payment log as I have been doing all of this year. Pretty much we got our first payment January 5th, and this takes us through all payments that we've received through today. So 31 renewals. I do want to remind everyone that our new fiscal year, as you can imagine, with just having had an election, is starting officially on April 1st. So you have about 21 more days to renew your membership to be considered on time. So that's just a little plug for Mary as well. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. And I will take any questions or comments on the report. Okay, I'll stop share and thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Melinda. Great job. Last order of business is a review and acceptance of the minutes from the February 9th, 2021 general meeting. Can I hear a motion?
I move to accept them.
Second.
They're long and detailed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes pass. Okay, so with that, our next board meeting is March 22nd. Michael and Leanne will invite you to come talk about One Stop. And next general meeting is April 13th. And we will have the transportation department come and talk about their department and all the things they're working on next month. And we will also reinitiate the neighborhood round robins beginning next month. We didn't do it tonight because we frankly didn't have enough time, but I have 3 names for next month and I'm going to mention them, all of you right now. Earl Prisley, the new VP, and I believe Lauderdale Manors or Lauderdale Lakes. He's a former city employee. So we're expecting big things, Earl, and we'll share examples of prior 60-second round robins. Ann Hilmer, assuming she is all mended by next month. Hopefully we'll hear from you, and John Burns. So those are the 3 names I have for round robins next month. Did anybody else sign up, or are they interested in doing a 60-second elevator pitch for your neighborhood? Okay. All right. We're good to go. All right. With that, thank you all very, very much. We love you, Kelly and Christina. We're going to miss you dearly, dearly. Please come back. We'd love to still see you on an ongoing basis. Thank you, Jim and Melinda, for manning the chat, and Mary for all your hard work, and all the other board members. Fantastic job. And members, thank you for being here tonight. And I think someone asked for Daphne's contact info. We will put that in the chat before we adjourn as well. With that, sayonara to all. Any comments from anyone before we close?
Betty has a comment.
Betty, go ahead.
You're on mute.
Unmute yourself, Betty.
Betty, you need to unmute your microphone.
I did. I know. It's just so great to be with seeing all of you. I miss you, and it's just and hearing what is being carried forth, as the oldest member of that's around except Dennis anymore, that it just is heartwarming to me to see what is happening. So thank you. Love you all.
Dennis is older than you. Okay?
Okay, I have to say, Dennis and I are the same age, so watch it.
But hey, Dennis was the president when I first started coming in the early 90s.
Wow.
So that's been quite a long time.
Right. Well, bless you, darling. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Good night.